So picture this. You're sitting in your end of quarter review, right?
Yeah, we've all been in that room.
Exactly. And your marketing team is just crushing it. They're pulling out all the stops, driving a record number of like highly qualified leads.
Sales reps are closing deals left and right,
Yeah,
high-fiving.
right. If you only look at the top of the funnel, everything is completely flawless. But then, and this is the scary part, you look closely at the underlying retention data,
Yeah.
and your churn rate is secretly, quietly ticking upward. Customers are basically walking out the back door just as fast as you're ushering them in the front.
It acts as this silent drain on resources.
Yeah.
I mean, you can build a category-defining product, but if there's a fundamental blur in your operational strategy,
Right.
like a blur between how you treat an experience versus how you treat a service intervention,
Mm.
you are essentially pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom.
And that exact dynamic is what we're tearing apart in this deep dive.
It's such a crucial topic.
It really is. We're pulling from some highly detailed research today from IBM and DevRev to finally settle the score on customer service, which is CS versus customer experience, or CX.
Because separating those two out is everything.
Exactly. Our objective today is to help you, especially if you're making strategic decisions or managing teams, understand how splitting these two concepts operationally and then, syncing them up technologically can stop that churn and build genuine brand loyalty.
The urgency here really comes from how these terms are treated in daily business operations. Like in boardrooms, on strategy calls, CS and CX are just thrown around interchangeably.
Yeah, people treat them like synonyms.
Right? Synonyms for simply being nice to the person paying us, but failing to separate them dictates where you allocate your budget, how you configure your software, and ultimately whether a customer decides your product is worth their time at all.
So true. But before we can even talk about software or budget allocation, we have to draw the actual boundary.
We need definitions.
Right. If we look at the core definitions from both IBM and DevRev, the big distinction really comes down to scope, timing, and intent.
Yeah.
Customer service is reactive. It's this transactional post-purchase subset of the business that is hyper-focused on solving a specific immediate problem. A user hits a roadblock, they reach out, you fix it.
I like to call it the fire extinguisher.
Oh, I like that.
Because, you don't walk around spraying a fire extinguisher all
Yeah.
day. You only pull the pin when something is actively combusting.
Right, right.
Customer experience, however, is the holistic, proactive, ongoing journey. It spans every single interaction a customer has with your brand.
From the very beginning.
Exactly. That starts the first time they see a retargeted ad on their phone. It continues through the sales process and extends all the way to them renewing an annual contract 3 years down the line. CX is the architectural blueprint of the entire building.
I always like to visualize these operational concepts just to make them concrete. If we imagine your business is a high-end Michelin star restaurant,
Okay, I'm with you.
the customer experience is the lighting when you walk through the door. It's the weight of the cardstock that the menu is printed on.
The music, all of that.
Yeah, the ambient noise level, the pacing of the courses, the taste of the food. It's the entire carefully engineered atmosphere.
And in that scenario, the customer service is the waiter rushing over to replace your fork when you accidentally knock it off the table.
Which actually brings up a really interesting blur in the lines, I think.
How so?
Well, if I drop my fork and the waiter notices instantly, smiles warmly, and hands me a fresh one before I even have to, wave them down.
Right, a great save.
Exactly. Isn't a really great fix from a customer service rep basically the same thing as a great experience? It feels like the distinction totally falls apart there.
It seems like it would, yeah. But the data actually points to a different conclusion.
Wait, really?
Yeah. While excellent customer service certainly elevates a moment and, prevents a negative impression from solidifying, it is fundamentally a recovery mechanism. It relies on something going wrong first.
Oh, I see.
A truly robust customer experience actually minimizes the need for that service intervention entirely. So going back to your restaurant analogy,
Right.
a perfect CX world means the table is designed with enough space and the tablecloth has enough grip that the fork never falls in the first place.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe a spare is already seamlessly integrated into the table setting. A phenomenal experience actively engineers the emergency out of the equation.
That reframes the entire goal for me. It's not about building a better fire department. It's about building fireproof houses.
Exactly. Building fireproof houses.
But, understanding that CX is the atmosphere doesn't actually help a founder know where to spend their money.
No, it doesn't.
To figure out the budget, we have to figure out the timeline. Like, When do these two forces actually show up in the customer's journey?
Well, we have to map the timeline directly to the traditional marketing funnel. Because customer experience is the umbrella, it oversees the entire life cycle.
Right, top to bottom.
Yeah, it starts at the awareness stage, when they're just figuring out your brand exists. It moves through consideration as they compare you to competitors.
Makes sense.
It governs the purchase moment, shifts into the loyalty phase as they use the product, and ideally ends in advocacy, where they basically do your marketing for you.
So looking at the timeline provided by IBM, what jumped out at me is that customer service doesn't really exist in those early stages.
Not at all.
CS just lies totally dormant during awareness and consideration. It really only activates right at the purchase stage, like maybe a promo code fails at checkout, right?
Right. And a live chat agent has to manually apply it so the cart isn't abandoned.
Exactly. And then it becomes incredibly dominant in the loyalty stage.
Yeah, the messy post-purchase reality. The customer has the product, but now they actually have to figure out how to integrate it into their daily workflow.
Which is when things break.
Exactly. They're hitting error codes, asking for tutorials, and opening support tickets.
Which ties directly into a fascinating and honestly slightly intimidating insight from the DevRev source.
The 7-day rule.
Yes, there is a highly specific crucible here for new users. The first 7 days of product use are absolutely make or break for long-term retention.
That first week is where the architectural blueprint of your CX is truly tested.
Let's ground this in a real-world scenario. Imagine a customer signs up for a new B2B project management software. On day 2, they need to import their existing database.
Pretty standard task.
Very standard. But the import button isn't on the main dashboard. It's buried under like 3 layers of submenus in the settings tab.
No nightmare.
Total nightmare. The customer spends 45 minutes clicking around, feeling increasingly frustrated and incompetent. That clunky onboarding completely compromises the customer experience.
And they might not even bother engaging your customer service team to ask where the button is.
Right. They might just close the tab, cancel the trial, and silently churn.
And that exact scenario is why journey mapping is not just some academic exercise. You aren't just drawing a timeline for a slide deck.
No, it's highly functional.
You're actively hunting for what the industry calls friction hotspots. You look at the data to see where people are dropping off or where support tickets are suddenly spiking.
And the financial impact of finding those hotspots is staggering.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah, the McKinsey data indicates that mapping the customer journey to find and fix these specific points of friction can increase revenue by up to 15%, while simultaneously lowering the cost to serve by 20%.
Which is a massive margin swing.
Huge. And the revenue increase makes sense to me. Happier customers stay longer, but break down the mechanism behind that 20% cost reduction. How does moving a button on a dashboard translate to like a massive reduction in operational overhead?
It comes right back to the relationship between CX and CS. If you analyze your journey map and discover that, say, 40% of your new users open a support ticket on day 2, simply asking how to import their database.
That's a ton of tickets.
It is. You've identified a massive resource drain. Every single one of those tickets requires a human being on your CS team to read, route, and respond.
Which costs money.
Right. But by taking that data, acting on the CX side, and just moving the import button to the center of the welcome dashboard, you instantly eliminate that entire category of support tickets.
Wow.
The friction disappears, and suddenly you need fewer support reps managing the queue. You just engineer the emergency out of the equation.
Okay, so if the strategy is to have CX and CS operating in tandem like that, how do we actually know if a company is pulling it off?
Well, that's where the metrics come in.
Right, because since they operate on entirely different timelines, CX playing the long game, CS playing the short game, the way we measure their success has to be completely different.
Very different.
And if you're a business leader, whatever you choose to measure is exactly what your team will optimize for.
Absolutely. The metrics are fundamentally opposed if they aren't managed correctly. Evaluating a customer experience team using customer service metrics is a fast track to destroying brand equity.
The sources lay out the specific acronyms that divide these two worlds pretty clearly. Let's look at the CX side first, the long-term report card.
Sure. For customer experience, you're really tracking holistic sentiment. You look at NPS Net Promoter Score, you look at CSA, your customer satisfaction score.
And CES, right.
Right, CES, Customer Effort Score, which measures how much friction the user experienced trying to accomplish their goal.
Mm-hmm.
And overriding all of that is the overall customer retention rate.
So these are designed to gauge long-term loyalty, emotional connection, and just overall usability.
Yes. But over in the customer service department, the metrics are inherently tactical. They're measuring the speed and efficiency of the emergency response.
Right. So a CS team is living and dying by FRT, first response time. They're tracking RT, average resolution time, and they're looking at issue resolution rate.
Which creates a natural built-in conflict of interest within the organization.
This is exactly what I wanted to dig into because the psychology of these metrics is fascinating.
It really is.
Let's say I'm a frontline support rep. My direct manager reviews my performance based almost entirely on average resolution time.
Which happens all the time.
All the time. My financial bonus is tied to how fast I get a customer off the phone or out of the chat window. If a customer calls in with a really complex problem, I am heavily incentivized to give them the fastest, most superficial Band-Aid fix possible.
Yep.
I might just email them a link to a dense 30-page PDF manual and immediately close the ticket to keep my RT number low.
And from the perspective of the CS department spreadsheet, you performed perfectly. You handled the ticket in 2 minutes.
Right. But from the customer's perspective, I just ruin their day. They feel dismissed, frustrated, and unsupported.
And they're still stuck with their problem.
Exactly. They just have to read a huge manual now. So my CS metrics look phenomenal, but I just actively tanked the CX team's net promoter score. I protected my own efficiency at the cost of their overall perception of the brand.
And that tension is exactly why siloing these two departments is a strategic failure. If the metrics don't communicate, the teams actively work against each other.
It's toxic.
It is. And this divide extends beyond just the metrics, too. It dictates the actual software and tools each department uses to do their jobs.
Yeah. IBM points out that the toolkits are entirely different. Customer experience teams are living inside CRM systems, customer relationship management platforms.
Right.
They're deploying A/B testing software to figure out which landing page copy causes less confusion. They use dynamic recommendation engines that track a user's past behavior. It's deeply analytical.
Very behavioral.
Yeah.
Very focused on smoothing the path forward. Meanwhile, the customer service teams are utilizing tools designed for immediate intervention.
Web-based knowledge bases, live chat interfaces.
Exactly. Ticketing systems, and increasingly, they rely on AI chatbots to deflect high volumes of repetitive inquiries.
Which brings us to the massive technological shift that's redefining all of this. Because if you're listening to this and mapping it onto your own business, managing all these different touch points,
It sounds like a lot.
it sounds paralyzing. Balancing conflicting metrics, integrating separate software stacks. It sounds like you need to hire an entire division of analysts just to keep the CS and CX teams from accidentally ruining each other's work.
Well, historically, that was the case. It required a massive, labor-intensive management structure. But modern businesses are bypassing that bottleneck through a fundamental shift toward what we call proactive synergy.
Proactive synergy.
Yeah, and it's driven largely by advancements in artificial intelligence.
I was looking at a specific statistic from the DevRev source that completely changed my perspective on the goal of customer service. The data shows that 81% of customers attempt to solve a problem themselves before they ever reach out to a human representative.
Over 8 in 10 people actively want to avoid your support team.
It's crazy, but it makes perfect sense when you think about your own behavior. If an app crashes or a feature isn't loading, your first instinct is never to call a 1-800 number, navigate a phone tree, and listen to hold music for 20 minutes.
Never.
You immediately Google the error code, you hunt for an FAQ page, you scour Reddit for a workaround. We crave the self-service option. We basically view interacting with customer service as a failure state.
That behavioral reality is forcing companies to transition away from a reactive model entirely. DevRev outlines 6 core components of effective customer service:
What are they?
personalization, timeliness, omnichannel support, active listening, product expertise, and regular check-ins.
Okay.
Now, if you rely purely on human agents, it is nearly impossible to scale all 6 of those components consistently, especially when the agent is dealing with a frustrated user.
Right. You can't expect a stressed support rep to perfectly execute active listening, deep product expertise, and hyper-personalization on their 50th call of the day.
Which is why those components are now being offloaded to and supercharged by proactive technology. The holy grail of this synergy is anticipating the customer's need before they even realize they are stuck.
Anticipating the friction.
Exactly. But achieving that requires moving away from legacy software platforms. We're seeing a massive migration away from systems that use bolted-on AI toward platforms that are entirely AI native.
We need to define that difference clearly because every single software vendor on the market right now slaps the word AI on their homepage.
Oh, everyone does.
What is the actual functional difference between bolted-on AI and an AI native platform?
So bolted-on AI functions like a Band-Aid placed over an outdated, fragmented nervous system. It usually takes the form of a rigid decision tree chatbot layered on top of an old database.
The ones that just give you multiple choice options.
Exactly. It can answer basic static questions like, what are your business hours? Or, what's the return policy? But the second a customer presents a nuanced problem, the chatbot hits a wall and routes them to a human agent. And because the system is fragmented, that human agent usually has no context, forcing the customer to repeat their entire problem from the beginning.
We've all been trapped in that exact loop. You type a detailed paragraph explaining your issue into a chat window. The bot fails, it transfers you to a live person, and their first message is, "Hi, how can I help you today?"
It is infuriating.
It's the worst.
AI-native platforms, however, utilize a much more sophisticated technology known as agentic AI.
Yeah.
This is not a script reading from an FAQ page.
How does it work?
Agentic AI operates continuously in the background, almost like an autonomous data analyst. It spans the entire architecture of the business.
Yeah.
It has real-time access to the CRM, the user's behavioral history, their billing tier, their current activity on the platform.
Wow.
It can process multilingual inputs naturally, and crucially, it is predictive rather than just reactive.
Let's build a case study around that to see how it actually merges CS and CX in real time. Let's say I'm a user working inside a financial forecasting software. I just upgraded to the premium tier, and I'm trying to generate a specific complex quarterly report. I click on the Reports tab, but I get confused by the parameters. I open a menu, close it, open another menu, and close it. I'm hovering my mouse around, clearly stuck.
Now, in a legacy system, you would eventually get so frustrated you'd click the Contact Start button and open a ticket. You would enter the reactive CS funnel.
Right. But with agentic AI, the system recognizes my behavioral pattern. It sees the repetitive clicking. It cross-references my CRM profile and notes that I'm a newly upgraded premium user interacting with a premium feature for the very first time.
And it doesn't wait for you to get angry.
Right. It intervenes proactively.
Exactly.
Before I even click the support button, a subtle chat window slides in. But it doesn't say, "How can I help you?" It says, "Hi there, I see you're setting up the quarterly forecasting report for the first time. Here's a 60-second video tutorial showing you exactly which parameters to select for your specific industry. And I went ahead and generated a one-click template for you to start from."
Boom.
Mm-hmm.
And the implications of that interaction are just profound. A problem was identified, a solution was delivered, and the customer was educated, all within seconds.
And from the user's perspective, they didn't receive customer service. They didn't feel like they had to ask for a repair.
Not at all.
They just felt like the software was incredibly intuitive. The service intervention happened so seamlessly that it basically disguised itself as a magical customer experience.
That is the ultimate synergy right there.
Yeah.
The agentic AI absorbed the friction before it could spark a fire. It protected the average resolution time because no ticket was ever officially opened.
Yeah.
And it drastically boosted the customer satisfaction score because the user felt anticipated and valued.
So if we pull all of this together for the person listening, whether you're running a massive enterprise or trying to scale a lean startup, the actionable takeaway here is a fundamental shift in perspective.
Right.
You have to start treating your customer service department as a standalone complaints bin. It cannot just be the basement department where angry emails go to die.
It requires integrating them into the core product strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about your customer journey not as a straight line, but as a complex piece of engineering. The customer experience is the smooth, freshly paved road you're trying to build for your user.
I love this analogy.
And customer service represents the shock absorbers on the vehicle. You need the shock absorbers because no road is perfectly flat forever, right? There will always be unexpected potholes or user errors. But if you spend all your time and budget just buying better, more expensive shock absorbers, you're still forcing your customer to drive over a terrible road.
Which is miserable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you take the data from the shocks, when CS tells CX exactly where the potholes are and you pave over them, you create a journey where the customer barely feels a bump. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 in this scenario. It equals an unbreakable brand moat.
And looking at the trajectory of this technology actually leaves us with a highly provocative operational question to consider for the future.
Oh, let's hear it.
As agentic AI models continue to evolve, as they become infinitely better at cross-referencing behavioral data, perfectly anticipating friction points, personalizing every single step of onboarding, and delivering hyper-accurate self-service before a user ever experiences frustration, we have to wonder about the end game.
What do you mean?
Will the traditional, human-led, reactive customer service department eventually become obsolete?
Whoa.
If the overarching customer experience becomes so flawless and predictive that it engineers every drop fork out of existence, does the emergency response team simply fade away, completely absorbed into the foundational architecture of the business?
That is a staggering thought. I mean, if you actually succeed in building the perfect frictionless environment, the concept of a support ticket might just become a relic of the past.
It challenges everything about how we currently staff and scale companies.
It really does. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of retention and loyalty. Take some time this week to sit down with your own team and actually map out your customer's journey. Find those hidden friction hotspots. Look at where your metrics might be competing against each other and ask yourself the hard question. Are you just endlessly putting out fires, or are you actively building a fireproof house? We will see you on the next deep